Raise your hand if you've ever studied and you forgot the next day. This has actually happened to me, most especially when I was in my final year in secondary school and my first year in the university. There was no one to tell me what to do, and there was no one to guide me through on how to read and remember anything. All they tell me is to study. The techniques that I applied then, I used to think that they're the best technique in the world. While I'm reading, I'll seem to remember, but when I get to the exam hall, everything will go blank and I'll keep wondering if something is happening to me. But not until I actually found out this technique that has actually helped me, and I've experimented with it quite numbers of times, and it has helped me a lot to remember anything I study at any point in time. I applied this technique throughout my university days, and I've been able to get good grades. If you can apply this technique, I assure you that you'll be able to not only understand but remember anything you study at any point in time. Before I go into explaining this technique that has actually helped me so far while I was in school, there are certain mistakes that you make that you always think are the right technique of studying, but then they are not. And I'm going to be dishing out those things, and I'll be telling you how you can adjust, and eventually I'll be sharing with you the technique that I used to apply. And if you can apply it and use it, I assure you that it will help you remember anything you study at any point in time. I'll be pointing out three things that you should focus on anytime you want to study, and these three things will help you remember anything aside from the technique that I'll be showing you. Now, the first thing is attention, the second thing is intention, and the third thing is emotion. Now, your attention is very important, and just imagine pouring water inside a basket and you expect it to hold water. If you keep, no matter how much you pour the water, the basket will not hold the water. That is how your brain is when you don't pay attention. Now, attention is very important because it is when you pay attention, your brain will be able to get in that particular information very well, and it will be able to solidify it and get into the long time memory. If you don't pay attention and your brain has been distracted from anything, there are tendencies that that information was not encoded properly and you will not be able to remember very well. Another reason why students don't pay attention while they are studying is because they don't like the subject. It might be because you are forced to do the subject. And how do you expect to remember or understand what you don't like studying? That's another problem. And this can actually make you not to pay attention and to seem as if you don't have the ability to understand a particular subject. But the problem is simply because you are being forced to learn it, or you are not interested, and that has actually been a form of distraction, and you were not able to remember. Now, one thing that I want you to do if you really want to increase your attention span is to try as much as possible to have value from what you are studying. If you have value for what you are studying and you are interested in it, you'll be able to get on with it and focus on it, and every other thing will be secondary, and you'll be able to and you'll be able and your brain will be able to assimilate it fast and build more connections. But if you keep having doubts that, will I be able to remember this thing, will I understand this thing, what if I don't understand in exam, if you keep having that thought while you are reading, it will always obstruct the rate at which you assimilate, and you won't be able to remember at any point in time. Another thing that I want you to also focus on anytime you want to read is that have intention. What is the goal you intend to achieve reading that thing? What is this specific thing that you really want to remember anytime you are studying? If you know the specifics that you want to remember and you know what you actually want to study, you'll be focused and you have a goal, and it will make it easier for you to be able to focus on those things and you'll be able to remember. But you don't if you don't have the intention, if you don't have the goal, and you are just doing anything anyhow, you discover that you didn't get anything from everything you've been studying all this while, and in fact, it would be as if you wasted your time. So always have an intention. What is that thing you really want to get from the material? What is that thing you really want to study from? Is it that a book? Is it that any kind of book at all? It could be a Bible, it could be a textbook. What is that thing you really want to get out of it? If you have the intention before going to it, serve as a direction on what you need to focus on and what you need to remember at any point in time. That is very important. And another thing is your emotion. Your emotion is very important because in your brain, there's what we call hippocampus, and the hippocampus is responsible for memory formation. Your hippocampus works together with your amygdala because your amygdala regulates your emotion. If you don't have good emotional response to what you are studying. Then if you don't have good emotions that is attached to what you are that you want to study, there is no how you'll be able to form memory from that thing that you are trying to study. For example, students that don't like certain subjects, you don't expect to remember those subjects. No matter how much you read it, it will be as if you don't have the ability, or it will be as if people will think you are dumb. But if you have positive emotion to it, and you love what you are reading so much that it gives you joy, then in fact it will make it very fast to be able to form memories from that thing, and in fact you'll be able to remember vividly. But if you don't have positive emotion attached to what you are studying, there'll be problem, and you won't be able to remember vividly. I discovered that things that I like reading, or things that I love so much that I gain happiness from it, no matter how hard it is, I'll keep on studying it and I'll remember anything I study. But if you don't have positive emotion towards it, and it seems as if you've been forced to read it, then how do you expect to remember? Because your amygdala works with your hippocampus, which is responsible for memory formation. So if you don't have positive emotion, or if you don't have any positive thing that you can attach to what you are reading, there's no how you'll be able to remember, and there'll be problem. Let me go into the mistakes that you make while studying. Now, one thing I will advise you not to do while studying is to cram. And I will also advise you to, anything you want to study and you really want to remember, you don't expect to read something now and you remember immediately. That is not how it works. That is not how your brain works. It takes time before you be able to remember, or be able to form things into your brain, or be able to consolidate information into your brain. Anytime you read something at first, it goes to your short time memory, which has limited capacity and is also referred to working memory. It is the extent of your level of attention that makes information to be old in your short time memory. The more attention you pay into something, the more your short time memory works well. If you don't pay attention to your short time memory, you will not be able to hold enough information, and there are no possibilities that is to transfer to the long time memory. And the goal of every learning is for you to transfer anything you learn from short term to long term memory, because it is when it is in the long term memory that you'll be able to remember. If it is the short term memory, then there are possibilities that it will fade off if you don't transfer it to the long term memory. Anytime you want to remember, if you've not been reading anything long before, and you read it now or today, and you expect to remember tomorrow or next tomorrow, there might be slim possibilities. You have to take it, it has to take time, it has to take a process, and there are ways you can do this. Now, that is why sleep is very important, because it is why you sleep memory consolidation happens. If you don't sleep, there are no tendencies that anything you read will be able to will be able to consolidate it to the long time memory. It is when you sleep, anything you read gets into the long time memory. If you don't sleep, for example, some students, I actually made that mistake too. Some students, we actually think that it is when you are up all night studying, and when you get to the exam, or that's when you'll be able to remember. It's a lie. I did that for a long time. I discovered that when I get to the exam, everything goes blank. In fact, I won't be able to remember anything. Not until I adopted this technique, I adopted this way by studying way before. And in fact, when my exam is very close, I don't study at all I do is try as much as possible to play and sleep, because that is the only way I can give my brain rest and be able to set my brain active to remember in the exam. And another thing I do most of the time is that when I do that, just few minutes to your exam, just revise a little and go for the exam. But if you've not been reading way before and you expect to remember everything you read in just 3 days to 2 days to your exam, you might not be able to remember everything. If you are really getting value from this video, please like the video and also subscribe to the channel. So now let's go on to the next point. After all the mistakes that I've made, and after that I've realized that all the techniques that I've been applying and nothing are nothing, and it can't yield the result I actually want. Now I discovered this particular technique, and it has actually helped me a lot of time. This technique is broken into 4 parts. We have jotting, we have revising, we have testing, and we have feedback. So I go through these 4 steps anytime I'm reading anything at all, and I need to remember. And one thing is that you should not do it when your exam is about a week time or in few days time, because you won't be able to get enough result out of it, and your brain will not be able to consolidate and work on it very well. First thing is that anytime I'm having a voluminous material, anything I want to read, I try as much as possible to jot down. Then while I'm jotting, there are several things that happen. I'm not just jotting for jotting's sake. I am jotting to engage with the material, to think about the material, to reflect on the material, to bring up questions in my mind, and to question what is in the material, and to relate it to what I already know, to compare it to what I already know. Because when I'm reading alone and I am not jotting, that is an engagement, and jotting is a form of engagement. If I am not jotting, I am just reading alone. I'm just going to be reading it like a newspaper, because I am not trying as much as possible to engage with it. So that is why I jot. I jot to question, I jot to engage, I jot to reflect. And while I'm jotting, I try as much as possible to draft out questions from anything I am jotting. Now, the reason, aside from jotting to question, to engage, to reflect, and to connect, I actually jot to reduce the stress that any potential stress I need to encounter along the line. Because anything that you are giving can be so voluminous, and it won't be very easy for you to go back again and read it. But if you actually jot and you reflect and you put it in your own terms, now it is that jotting you'll be studying along the line. Because since you've reflect, you've engaged with it, anytime you are reading your jotting, it will always connect to what you already tied it to. Represent the concepts you are trying to read in a real life situation in your book, aside in a box beside the concept. So anytime you are reading, it will serve as a clue for you to be able to remember anytime you are reading. So jotting is a form of foundational learning, because that is where you lay all the foundation. That is where you know everything. Then after jotting, then you revise. Now this revision process is where the work starts, because throughout the semester or throughout along the time that you need to revise this thing, you need to keep revising it again. You can use the flashcard, you can paste it around your room, you can cut it into, you can write concepts into certain piece of paper and paste it around. This is a form of you seeing it, and it will keep reinforcing in your brain. The more you revise, the more you'll be able to understand, and there are tendencies that you'll be able to remember. Now, when you are revising, another step that you need to go on to is testing, because you need to test yourself whether you already know or not, in order to avoid illusion of knowing. Because when you are revising, or you might be thinking that you already know what you are reading, but then it is until when you test yourself, you already know your lapses, you already know what you don't know and what you know. Then after testing, you go back to feedback. It is from your testing that you get feedback that, okay, from what I have read, what is that thing that is left that I need to focus on? What is that thing that I need to know? Then from your feedback, then you can go back to revision. You can go back to revise again. Then you go to testing. Then you go to feedback. So you can go back and forth into this process. And that is what I have been applying so far throughout my university days. When I'm giving a note, I try as much as possible, or anything at all, for the first time, I I prime my brain. That is, I glance through everything. Then I sit down. I jot. At this jotting point, you should be focused. You should pay full attention, because so many things will be happening in your brain, and this is where you'll be able to know. Okay, this is where you'll be able to know times where you need to connect to what you already know. This is when you need to know whether you are moving along. This is where you need to know whether you are understanding anything you study. This is where you need to know you need to visit other sources in order to gain more understanding on what you are reading. Once you gain that understanding and that link has happened when you are jotting, it is important to write it down, because this is what you use in revising, because you don't need to do all those things again from the beginning. Then after you've jot down, then you can go to the testing and the feedback stage. Now, there are times that you might not be able to jot down in one sitting, and that is why it is very important to have a study plan. Have a plan. When you have a plan, I do this a lot. Anytime I get into the new semester, I try as much as possible to have a plan. And this is the plan that I will use in studying, and it will always guide me through the semester. And this plan is subject to change because there are things that can change on the way, there are things that can come up, and I will always need to adjust those plans to suit the situation that I am. And that is all about that. So I hope you got so much value from this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up in order for it to spread to more people, and also subscribe to the channel in order to get more videos like this. Now, if you want to get more information on how I study in the exam, how I study for my exam, and how I've been able to remember anything I study with less stress, you can check out this video on how to study less and learn more. So thank you so much for watching, and see you on the next one.